Shalom. First and foremost, call Halal Yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem HaRachak. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that I learned this truth from. And also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. In this video, I'm going to be going into an article, and this is from the Newsbreak app. And the source of this article is from Fortune. Okay, and as you can see, the title of the article says, "More people are moving out of the U.S. than moving in for the first time since the Great Depression, a bad omen for the $38.8 trillion national debt." Okay, so as it's going to go into, as of now in Babylon the Great America, okay, as of 2026, there are now more people moving out of the United States than people moving in. Okay, and pretty much you have certain economists here in America looking at that, okay, and sensing that that's going to further bring more economic woes to Babylon the Great. Okay, and as it goes into, it says, in just 1 year, the Trump administration's highly visible crusade against immigration has brought new entries into the U.S. to a grinding halt. The demographic consequences are already starting to show up in economic data and can soon worsen the increasingly dire state of the nation's $38.8 trillion and growing national debt. Okay. And so, over this past year under the current Trump administration, one of the major reasons as to why you're seeing less people from from different countries around the world coming to the United States or moving to the United States is because of these mass deportations. Okay, the mass persecution against so-called illegal aliens and illegal immigrants. Okay, different nations of color, okay, that are here in Babylon the Great America, okay, that are looked at as illegals or here illegally, and migrants and things like that. Okay, from Issachar and the northern tribes to Somalians, right? Certain so-called Asian nations, right? These people around different countries around the world are seeing how different migrants and so on are treated here in America, Babylon the Great, under this current Trump administration, with these ICE raids and people being arrested and thrown into these ICE detention centers, okay, not receiving any form of due process, no nothing, okay, just being profiled, arrested, thrown into the back of trucks, okay, and being hauled off to who knows where. You see that? And so different various people in various nations around the country are seeing the current state of what's going on in Babylon the Great under this current Trump administration, and they're pretty much giving second thoughts on coming over here, whether it be visiting over here or coming over here for educational purposes, for school or college or whatnot, or looking to come here to set up a particular business, okay, or visit family members, or whether it be looking to live here permanently as legal citizens. Okay, those days are pretty much over. All right, because real quick, let's get Isaiah 47. All right, as America is no longer being looked at as tender and delicate. Isaiah 47 and verse 1. "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground." Okay, and as we always bring out, the virgin daughter of Babylon that you read here in Isaiah 47, it's talking about Babylon the Great. Okay, Babylon the Great that will be ruling in these end days, which is the United States of America. Babylon the Great. Okay. "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground." Okay, and sitting on the ground or sitting in the dust represents being brought down or being cast down to a lower state. Okay, being humbled, basically. You see that? And it says, "There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate." Okay, let's look up the word tender. All right, America is no longer being looked at as tender and delicate. Okay, the word tender is Strong's H7390, rock, rock. Okay, and it means tender, soft, delicate. And it also goes into definition C, soft of words. Okay, gentle words. All right. Yeah, so these different nations and peoples throughout the four corners of the earth no longer look at America, Babylon the Great, as tender. Okay, they don't look at the policies and the ways of America as soft anymore, tender. Okay, because when people nowadays when people throughout the world perceive America, they no longer look at this place as the land of opportunity, so to speak. Okay, the land to upgrade your life, or upgrade your so-called education, or upgrade your your business or your career or whatnot. Okay, no, because people around the world, okay, especially, and of course people here in Babylon the Great America, they now look at America as a land of pretty much oppression. Okay, people's rights, constitutional rights, are being chipped at more and more. Okay, each and every day, with all these executive orders and unrighteous decrees, right? These ICE agents, going door to door, okay, violating constitutional rights, right? People and as well, more and more people throughout the earth, and even here in America, are now starting to see and realize that America, okay, really goes throughout the earth and does the bidding of the small hats. Okay, Amalek. You see that? And as well, these people around the world, okay, can pretty much see that America is pretty much circling the drain. Okay, America is going down. It's no longer being looked at as tender, soft words, gentle words, right? As fair, equal, the land of opportunity, and all these things. Okay, and it's no longer looked at as delicate, which the word delicate is Strong's H6028. Ainog, and it means dainty, delicate. Okay, Strong's definition, luxurious. See that? Luxurious. So America is no longer looked at as a land of luxury. Okay, hey, because in past times, generations ago and decades ago, okay, people throughout the world looked at coming to America and traveling to America and ultimately living in America. People throughout the earth generations ago looked at that as a flex. Okay, they took pride in moving to America to seek a better life and seek career opportunities and educational opportunities, right? Seeking particular freedoms and luxuries and comforts that they weren't allowed to have in their native countries, right? That's how people throughout the earth looked at America generations and decades ago, right? Luxurious, okay? Comfort, the land of opportunity, the land of upgrading life. Well, now, one at a time, as America is going down, okay, and is being exposed as well, people throughout the earth no longer look at this place as luxurious, okay, and especially, the people here in America, Babylon the Great, because hell, here in America, still are struggling with inflation, right? Paying a arm and a leg for rent, struggling to afford gas, struggling to afford particular medicines, okay, just struggling to just to so-called live life here in America as of 2026. The people here in majority of people here in Babylon the Great aren't living, in luxury and comfort, so to speak, right? Because hell, there's even a study that you can look up that pretty much over 60% of Americans, okay, 60 to 70% of Americans, okay, are living paycheck to paycheck. That doesn't sound like luxury or comfort to me, okay? Nor does it sound like luxury or comfort to many people throughout the earth, okay, that may have been seeking to move to America, okay, maybe to advance their education or seek career opportunities or start a business. Okay, no, people are pretty much looking at America as through. Okay, no longer looking at this place as tender and delicate, luxurious, comfort. Okay, the land of opportunity. Because what? Ultimately, Yahweh Shemal Shai via prophecy, all right, is bringing the virgin daughter of Babylon, America, to the ground. Okay, in the dust, the Lord is casting this place down. You see that? And so, going back to the article, it says, in just 1 year, the Trump administration's highly visible crusade against immigration has brought new entries into the United States to a grinding halt. The demographic consequences are already starting to show up in economic data and could soon worsen the increasingly dire state of the nation's $38.8 trillion and growing national debt. Okay? And I'm gonna jump down to here. That's like it. It says negative net migration hasn't definitely happened in the United States for almost a century, not since the Great Depression, all right, of the 1930s. It says the U.S. native-born population is also in free fall, well below the replacement rate needed to maintain population numbers in the long run. And you see, and that's especially primarily amongst Edomites here in America, okay? Because these Edomites over recent years, they're not populating, they're not reproducing as much. Okay, the Edomite population is on a decline here in America, Babylon the Great. You see, and as well, that's another major reason why you have these ICE raids going on. Okay, primarily targeting the northern tribes, so-called Hispanic tribes and native tribes. Issachar, Gad, Reuben, Ephraim, and so on, and as well, other heathen nations of color as well, Somalians, because what? Okay, when you further go into why, these this ICE, okay, under the Trump administration is doing all these arrests, okay, and doing all these deportations. When you go further into it, is to basically to make America so-called white again, okay, as these Edomites here in America feel that they know that their population here in America is on the decline because they're not reproducing enough, right? Their men and their women aren't getting along, right? And at the same time, they see all these different nations of color, coming here to here in America. They're coming here with their families. They're procreating, they're reproducing, okay, and growing in number. And so these Edomites, pretty much feel that they're being outnumbered in their own kingdom, so to speak, America, Babylon the Great. And so one of the things that we've been seeing over this past year by Esau, Edom, these Edomite nationalists and this Trump administration is, using ICE and using Border Patrol to pretty much target, okay, different nations of color here in America, Babylon the Great. Starting with the northern tribes of the nation of Israel, so-called Hispanic and native tribes, all right, and as well targeting Somalians, all right, and as well different so-called Asian nations, right. And that's all to, okay, attempt to make America, so-called white again, and make the Edomite in America feel comfortable again, okay, make the Edomite in America feel dominant once again as it was in times past. Okay, but all these what's happening to the to the migrants and people of nations of color here in America, Babylon the Great, that's all going to ultimately backfire, all right, in the long run. Okay, because it's going to bring forth more economic turmoil. Okay, it's going to place a major blow on the workforce here in America, Babylon the Great, because a large number of the workforce here in this country are filled by so-called illegal migrants. You see that? And as well, there's even studies that have recently come out showing that for years and decades, okay, so-called illegal migrants, illegal immigrants and whatnot, okay, majority of them are law-abiding, everyday working people here in this country, right? And as well that they also pay their fair share of taxes, over these years and over these decades. You see that, but under this current administration, they want to portray them as criminals and violent criminals and drug dealers and all these things. But yeah, study shows that majority of these so-called migrants that's been arrested over this past year, okay, none of them have criminal records. Okay, they're not these violent criminals and drug dealers and murderers that the media is portraying them to be. All right, majority of them are regular everyday working class people. Okay, getting up, working their tails off, paying their taxes. Okay, having families, right, and just trying to so-called live a better life here in America, Babylon the Great. But now, as we've been seeing over this past year, a lot of them have been getting, deported, arrested by these ICE agents. Okay, and a lot of that is going to have negative effects on Babylon the Great America. Okay, so I'm gonna read this again. It says, negative net migration has indefinitely happened in the U.S. for almost a century, not since the Great Depression. The U.S. native-born population is also in free fall, well below the replacement rate needed to maintain population numbers in the long run. And again, a large portion of this last statement that I just read is especially amongst the Edomite population here in America. Their population is especially in a free fall because again, the Edomites here in America aren't reproducing it as much as in times past. Okay, and of course there's a lot of things that can play in that. Okay, the steady rift between men and women here in America, right? As you have the women, pretty much doubling down on the whole feminist modern woman mindset, rebelling against men and rebelling against patriarchy, right? Choosing to be single rather than married, right? And having children. And on the other side, you have, a lot of these men here in America, especially Edomite men, okay, siding with the whole, red pill philosophy, MGTOW and things like that. Okay, so there's a constant and steady rift between the Edomite man and the Edomite woman, all right? And as well, financial struggles play a part in it as well. Okay, but overall, the Edomite here in America is through. All right, they're not reproducing. They're not enjoying their kingdom. All right. They, overall, the Edomite here in America is through. They're broke. They're losing jobs left and right. Okay. They see more and more that their President Trump, okay, it's pretty much gave them the middle finger, as that ultimately he's in office to do the bidding of the small hats, and ultimately do the bidding of the elites of Esau Edom, who are the ones who really benefit from Edomite supremacy. You see that? Because the average everyday Edomite here in America has pretty much become the new niggas. Okay, they're the main ones broke, struggling, losing jobs. All right, they're the main ones that's on government assistance. You see that? They're the ones that's now getting shot, all right, and unalived in the middle of the street by federal agents. You see that? The average everyday Edomite here in America is through. They're the new niggas, okay, in their own so-called kingdom. You see that? But as it continues to read, it says right here, with fewer immigrant arrivals already dealing a blow to the workforce, the shrinkage of the American taxpayer base is set to further widen the country's deficit and hurt its prospects for economic growth. Yeah, and what's some of the major reasons why the taxpayer base is pretty much diminishing, because a lot of people over this past year, especially, have been losing jobs. Okay, federal jobs to lower level jobs and entry level jobs. Okay, a lot of people losing jobs due to DEIs. Okay, government cuts, right? And as well, of course, a lot of people are losing jobs due to AI, right, and automation. And so, therefore, what if people aren't are losing jobs and they're not working? And therefore, what they can't pay taxes, okay? Nor can they afford daily essential goods such as food and water and medicine and gasoline and so on and so forth. And so all these things that we're going into, okay, from the deportations to people moving out of the country, then people moving in. All these things are having negative, okay, economic impacts on America, Babylon the Great. Okay, and again, the fact that, as this article is going into, more people are moving out of this country than moving in, it speaks to how pretty much America, Babylon the Great is through. All right, and let's get Jeremiah. Jeremiah 51 and verse 8, it says, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Okay, and the Babylon that we're reading of right here in Jeremiah chapter 51, as well as Jeremiah chapter 50, is also the same Babylon that we just read of in Isaiah 47. Okay, it's all speaking to the same Babylon, which is all talking about the Babylon that will be ruling in these end times, which is Babylon the Great. Okay, which is America, the United States of America. It says again, Jeremiah 51 and verse 8, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Okay, America is circling the drain on all spectrums. It's going down politically, okay, financially. The dollar is being weakened more and more throughout the earth. A lot of nations around the world are finding ways to to do business and trade outside of the dollar. Okay, and of course, Babylon the Great, America is also fallen socially, right? The divide between men and women. Okay, people divided up over these politics. The whole left versus right paradigm. Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal, right? And all these things all together showcase that America is through. Babylon the Great is fallen and is getting ready to be destroyed. It says, howl for her, take balm for her, if so be she may be healed. See that? In this place, America, Babylon the Great cannot and will not be healed. All right, is at a point of no return. It says, verse 9, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. You see that? So people here in America, Babylon the Great, okay, that are from different countries and different nations throughout the earth, they're pretty much forsaking this place and ultimately going back to their own countries. You see that, as this article is going into. More people are moving out of the United States than moving in. Okay, people are forsaking Babylon the Great America and pretty much dipping the hell out of this place. All right, because people both here in this country and all throughout the earth can see that this place is going down. Okay, America is no longer the dominant nor luxurious country that it once was throughout all these generations. Okay, it's no longer being looked at as tender and delicate. It's no longer being looked at as a land of opportunity. Okay, the land to so-called live a good life and find career opportunities and start a business, a successful business. Okay, no, this place is circling the drain. All right, and again, many people throughout the earth can see that this place is going down as well, which is why you're seeing tourism throughout America on a steep decline. Okay, people aren't coming into this country as much as in times past because what they fear that they can get grabbed up by ICE, right, thrown into a detention center or some type of prison center, all right, and never be seen again. Okay, be tortured, be SA'd, right? Their children being taken away from them. You see that? That's many people around the world fear upon coming to here in America, Babylon the Great, as of 2026. All right, and ultimately, as I just read, this place cannot be healed. Okay, it cannot, nor will it ever be healed. All right, and that's ultimately the will of Yahweh Shemel Shah, because the Lord is getting ready to destroy Babylon the Great America. All right, in World War III by way of fire. You see that? Nuclear fire. And let's go to the previous chapter, Jeremiah chapter 50, in verse 16. It says, "Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest." All right, the sower, him that handles the sickle in the time of harvest. That speaks to what? These farmers. All right, and that's another major sign that America, Babylon the Great, is falling over this past year as well. All right, farmers here in America have been pretty much given the middle finger. Okay, farmers are pretty much being cut off. All right, and one major reason as to why they're being cut off is because they're not being funded by the government. Okay, by the Trump administration as they were in times past, and as well, these farmers are also going out of business as well because a lot of the people that worked on these farms here in America, Babylon the Great, were so-called illegal migrants. Mainly that of the northern tribes. Issachar, right, working in those fields. Okay, planting the crops, picking the crops. Okay, preparing the produce that you buy in the stores, right? Well, now that's all being cut off. Okay, that's all being done away with. All right, and of course it's all being done systematically as well. Because of course not only are these things happening as a result of Bible prophecy, the will of the Lord taking place in the earth, but as well, these things Yahweh Shema Shah is using the elites of Esau Edom to make all these things come to pass by doing it systematically. Okay, because the elites of Esau Edom, in their minds, all right, they're cutting off farming here in America, right? And bringing forth all these agendas here in America to ultimately usher America, Babylon the Great, into the NWO agenda, right? And what's one of the agendas of the elites of Esau Edom, according to this guy K. Schwab? Pretty much you will own nothing and be happy. Okay, you won't own any land, you won't own your house, hell, you won't even own your own body. Okay. Because ultimately, what the elites of Esau Edom want to stick that micro C-hip, which is the MOTB, inside of all humanity, okay, and control farmlands and control food, okay, creating food, lab-grown meat and all this other BS, all right. And as it's going into right here in Jeremiah 50, verse 16 again, "Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest." These farmers pretty much being given a short end of the stick. It says, "For fear of the oppressing sword, they shall turn every one to his own. They shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land." See that? And so, a major reason as to why, many people are moving out of America, according to what we just read in Jeremiah 50 verse 16, is the oppressing sword, which is likened to what, as we see so far, these ICE agents doing these raids, going from door to door, right? Profiling various people of color, okay, and arresting them. Even if they're the actual legal citizens, okay, they're still just grabbing them up, arresting them, not giving them any form of due process, right? Bringing them to these detention centers and these ICE detention centers, and just doing who knows what with them. You see that? And with all this going on, okay, it's causing many people to pretty much just get the hell up out of this country. You see that? And as well as putting many other people throughout the world in fear of coming to this country because of what? That oppressing sword. This current Trump administration and these ICE raids, and how they're treating various peoples of color throughout this place. All right, it's pretty much led to people being left with no choice but to get up out of this place and go back to their own native lands. You see that? And also Isaiah 13, right, prophecies about Babylon. Hey, Babylon that you read of in Isaiah 13 is also speaking of Babylon the Great America. Okay, Babylon that will be ruling in these outer days. Okay, so here in Isaiah 13, okay, it's going into how the Lord is getting ready to bring judgment. All right, various different judgments upon Babylon the Great America, right? And as you jump down, okay, just to go straight to the point, Isaiah 13 and verse 13, it says, therefore, this Yahweh Shai speaking right here. He says, therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place, in the wrath of the Lord Yahweh Shai of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. Okay, and it's ultimately speaking of how the Lord is going to bring nuclear destruction upon Babylon the Great America in World War III. Okay, but verse 14, it says, and it shall be as the chase roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. All right, and we see that happening right now. Okay, people are moving out of America, Babylon the Great, all right, and fleeing to their own lands, their own native countries, okay, because they see how America under this current Trump administration are treating so-called migrants and different nations of color, okay, and as well they see that America is no longer tender and delicate as it was in times past. All right, this is no longer the land of opportunity, the land to start a successful business or upgrade your life, right? So-called live a good life, okay, and have various freedoms to do as you will, okay, because all the so-called freedoms of America, Babylon the Great, are slowly but surely being taken away, okay, and ultimately this place is being ushered and being brought close, more and more closer to a technocracy, all right. The NWO, right? A digital slavery via the MOTB digital system, right? And many people are pretty much getting up out of this place, all right. But Slakia, I want to read this in let's read this in the translations, NLT. Isaiah 13 verse 14 in NLT. Everyone in Babylon will run about like a hunted gazelle, like sheep without a shepherd. They will try to find their own people and flee to their own land. All right. AMP. And like the hunted gazelle, or like sheep that no man gathers, each foreign resident, see that? Each foreign resident will turn and go back to his own people, and each one flee to his own land, right? And that's what's happening. Foreign residents here in America, Babylon the Great, they're turning back and going back to their own countries and going back to their own peoples, okay? because America is falling. Babylon the Great is falling. It's circling the drain. Okay, this land is becoming a land of, total oppression. Okay, total corruption, right? Violence, lies, deceptions, BS. Okay, you know, economic free fall. All right, and many people are pretty much, getting the hell up out of this place. You know, and hey, and guess what? Just as you have people, here in America, Babylon the Great, as these people, slowly but surely are physically fleeing out of this place. You see that? How much more we, the hopeful elect, all right, the men of the Lord, should be spiritually fleeing out of Babylon the Great America. Okay, because as Scripture says in Jeremiah, was that Jeremiah 51? Yep, Jeremiah 51. Jeremiah 51 and verse 6, it says, "Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul." You see that? And that's what we, the hopeful elect, are doing here in Babylon the Great America. Okay, us, the hopeful elect, the remnant of the nation of Israel. We're not physically fleeing out of this place. Okay, because we know we have to be here to preach the gospel. All right, and wake up the elect amongst all the 12 tribes. Right? But instead it said what? Okay, flee out of the midst of Babylon by doing what? Deliver every man his soul. You see that? We deliver our minds and deliver our souls out of this place. Okay, through the Spirit. By, cleaving to Yahweh Shema Shai. Just as the scripture says the remnant would do, pursuant to Isaiah the 10th chapter. It talks about how the remnant would no longer stay upon him that smoked him. Right? Esau, Edom. But instead, what? Will stay upon Yahweh Shema Shai in truth, roughly paraphrasing it. You see that? And it says, "Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense." You see that? And hey, that day is soon to come. When Yahweh Shema Shai is going to bring vengeance upon Babylon the Great America for the wickedness and the atrocities that is done to his people, as well as all the corruption and the wickedness that is spread throughout the four corners of the earth. Okay? And so, with that, Lord willing, this video is edifying. And until next time, shalom.